50% of marriages end in divorce. For those that get married for a second time, 60 to 70% of those end in divorce. Why is this happening? Why are relationships falling apart? Why can we not stay together and have a happy, fulfilling relationship with a significant other? Well, my guest today, Lauren Dry, is a relationship expert, and she's going to talk about the core reasons and give you actionable advice on how to act differently, to approach your partner in a different way, and to find fulfillment through your relationships. It's a wonderful conversation. She's open, she's raw, she shares freely. You're going to get a lot of value out of this episode. Lauren is known as the Connection Catalyst. She's a marriage coach and unconscious mind specialist with a passion for putting clarity and ease back into modern relationships and families. Her number one relation reset program, Rise into Regulation, focuses on harnessing the wisdom and the science of the body to end resentment, to resolve the triggers, and reset the hidden patterns that ruin and run our relationships, both, right? So with that, Lauren, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here. I'm really excited to, dive into all the fun stuff that, patterns are my passion, particularly around the patterns that can sneakily take over, even the things that seem most obvious. And for so many of my clients, driven, passionate people who are so successful in so many other areas of their life, learning about patterns and resetting those patterns and getting back to the basics and having a lot of peace back in their body again. It's my passion and I love it. And I'm so happy to be here and hanging out with you.
Hey, Lauren, this is going to be a little bit different for my audience because you're the first relationship coach that I've hosted. I've had a lot of business coaches and life coaches and certainly entrepreneurs and very successful founders. But this is really the first time I've interviewed a relationship coach on this podcast. And I'm excited for it because the podcast is on business, health, and wealth. And without our health, without our mental health, without a strong relationship in our life, a primary relationship, it makes it more difficult. And so I would just love to know what you were very passionate when you introduced yourself. What got you into this line of work? What first interested you in becoming an expert in relationships and triggers and all of that?
Do you know what? I'm listening to, I don't know if you've heard it yet, but there's a podcast episode with the Diary of the CEO and Alex Hormozy, and he talks about the 3 reasons why people get into business. And I really resonated with the pain one. Yeah, people get into business for all sorts of reasons, but for me, it was really a selfish journey. Like my marriage was falling apart, fell apart. And I was so hyper focused on the ways to make it better, to keep my work going, to just get things on track and just move on and get on with my life again. And it wasn't until that I hit that breaking point of everything falling apart and really facing that decision of, am I going to be happier alone? Are we going to be happier alone? Is this completely unsalvageable? Am I ever going to feel okay? Am I just going to end one relationship and one family system just to repeat the whole cycle again somewhere else? Because, like we all know that we've got our stuff, right? We all know that we've got our own triggers. But the hardest part for me, particularly as someone who likes to think of myself as a relatively intelligent person, someone who can find a problem and be like, okay, take me from A to Z. Like, I've got it. You just give me the steps and I'll do it. And it was like flogging a dead horse. I was doing all of the things. And the one thing that I really needed it to be okay, because it was affecting every other area of my life, my parenting, my work, my friendships, my mental health. And it occurred to me, I can paper over this and I can mask up as much as I like, but I still have to go home. I still have to come home. And whether it's coming home to my husband or just coming home to myself and having that peace and ease, I was like, right, this is it. I'm going to, and as I said, it started from a completely selfish reason, and it started from that P for pain. I really needed not to ever be in this situation again. And I went on a journey of, I'd spent decades in traditional therapy. I'd done the retreats, I'd done the, the TP under the moon. I was just done. I needed there to be science. I needed it to be usable. I needed to be simple. And I needed to like break these patterns that I knew that at least know the difference between what was me, what was someone else, and how
Hmm.
to make relationships something I could rest in again, as opposed to being the greatest mystery and challenge of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I've read somewhere, heard where 90% of what we do every day is just a pattern. Like
Mm,
10% we're making choices and we're doing things, but 90% is just automatic. It's the way we've learned. It's what we do. It makes our life easier and more simplified because of all the bombardment of choices
yeah,
and all the
yeah.
noise.
Yeah, a whopping 95%. A whopping 95% of our habits, behaviors, patterns, relationships, our communication, the way we interact, it's all founded in the patterns that live in our unconscious mind.
Wow.
How
Wow.
wild is that? And we spend so
Yeah.
often sitting there, like, just going in circles talking about, how to stack dishes or what happened when we were kids. But, like,
Yeah.
there's more.
Yeah.
There's something else behind the dishes. Like, maybe we should
Yeah.
start there.
Yeah. 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 It's never about this. It's never, well, the fight is never about the dish in
Never
the
about the
sink for
dishes.
sure. Yeah. Well, let's just jump right into it then. What are the unique challenges that you've seen with, especially because of my audience, that entrepreneurs and driven people, business owners, high level executives, that they face in their marriage and relationships?
Yeah.
Asking for a friend.
You know what? And this is, I think, such a unique challenge, and why the people who come to Rise resonate with this so much. There is a unique and, debilitating, and I just wanna, like, almost hold everyone's hand while I'm saying this. There is almost a unique and debilitating sense of failure that can come with knowing that you have the capability to problem solve to a great degree, at a great level, and then in the one place where you need that foundation to be good, it's like the more that you try and the harder you try to fix it, the more it gets broken. So there's a specific and unique challenge for particularly entrepreneurs, people who have, high level of energy and concentration that's needed for their business, and a specific skill set that has allowed them to succeed in so many areas of their lives. That specific challenge, without nourishment and without conscious support, can be the exact same thing that derails our
Mm,
our the foundation that we need the most. Because the the foundation that is required for a really solid, supportive, healthy, loving relationship, is curiosity and play. And that happens when we're in a really rested nervous system state. However, a lot of the people who come into my world are people who are so used to staying in that state of hyper awareness, hyper independence, you know, extreme nitty gritty ability to problem solve. That same skill set is working against them to be able to stay in a place of curiosity and play that allows them to have really beautiful, really supportive, really like loving connection and relationships, because relationships can't be problem solved. They need to be sat with, nourished, given space, given room, without abandoning that part of ourselves that says, oh gosh, if I like take the pedal off the metal, it's all going to fall apart. And that really comes down to a key understanding of where hypervigilance, it can be a skill set that takes you very far in life. But we want to know how and when and where to be able to just downregulate that part of ourselves and step into a more restful, intuitive, deeply knowing place, which actually allows us to not turn off problem solving, but switch into a higher gear of problem solving that allows
Mm,
us to more, make richer decisions, make more complex plans that are aligned with the highest vision, not only for our business, but our family and our relationships. And that happens when we allow ourselves to get out of hypervigilance and into deep trust and deep intuition and that playful space.
This segment is sponsored by Rockbox Fitness Franchising. Take control of your destiny and join the boutique fitness revolution with Rockbox Fitness. If you're ready to make a real impact in your community and own your own business that empowers people to achieve their best life, then Rockbox is the opportunity you've been looking for. They provide comprehensive support from site selection, upfit, training, and turnkey marketing, so you can open your studio with confidence and a strong recurring revenue member base. Visit rockboxfitness.com and click on franchise opportunities to learn more about this exciting venture in the fast-growing boutique fitness industry. It's time to turn your passion for fitness and for business into a thriving venture. I have to share here that just recently, last week, I had a really challenging, difficult, but exciting day because I love solving all the problems and being part of that. And then went from that day that was crazy long and hard right to the gym to work out. And then I get home about 7 o'clock at night and I come in on fire. I'm just guns a-blazing. And my wife, as I'm talking, she's kind of back at me and kind of in my face. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with you? And she goes, I'm just matching your energy. I'm just
Mhm.
matching the energy you brought into our home,
Yep.
and it stopped me in my tracks and made me realize, wow, I did just bring that into our house, our very peaceful, calm house.
Yeah.
I just came and it had nothing to do with her. It was
Mhm.
the state of mind I was in.
Mhm.
And I just walked right through the door with all that, I
Mhm.
wouldn't say negative energy, but maybe negative energy, and she wasn't being negative, but she was just kind of meeting me
Mm.
right at that. And I was like, wow, thank you for
Yeah.
exposing that to me, because I didn't even realize I was acting that way.
Yeah. It's hard. And the challenge is that's the kind of energy that really allows you to stay like in a forward momentum place. The challenge is when we bring that into our relationships, it's such an assertive energy that if we don't have full awareness of it, what it can look like is like hyper awareness of every facial expression that our partner has. Really taking the debate about the dishes till 3 a.m. and making it a thesis on whether there is integrity in the relationship. Like we really need to have a strong foundation. That's where a lot of these problem solving tendencies can come from. However, without that nervous system support, that response is running our relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So how do you turn that off? How do
Yeah,
because I'm sure when you're coaching people and you're helping people, greatly improve their relationships with your program,
yeah,
it has to start with us, right? It always starts with a person. It's
yeah,
never like, hey, they got to change. No.
yeah,
First, we have to change.
yeah,
How do you broach a very successful man or woman who are getting positively rewarded
yeah,
for behavior that in the home is somewhat negative, but in the
yeah,
workplace they're being positively rewarded?
yeah. First of all, what I like to do is just say I completely get it. And what I share a lot, just about my own personal story is what I like to call the D-Day of, that first day where I really recognized that I couldn't work my way out of this problem. We were, sitting down, and I had gone this is what I felt at the time, I'd gone to the ends of the earth. "We need to go see this couples counselor. I'm gonna go see this therapist. I'm gonna go take myself on a holiday. I'm going to focus on my work." Like, the the merry-go-round that I went on was constant, and it was always a problem-solving exercise. But it wasn't until the day where I sat back and realized that what I was seeking was And what I was focusing on was an external locus of control. If I have every piece of the puzzle, slotted into place, I'll be happy. Then I'll be able to rest. Then I'll be able to enjoy myself. Then we can relax. Then we can go on that holiday, and it was always then and then when this happens, when this happens. And it wasn't until I sat back in a place of surrender and went, do you know what? I know enough now. I've got enough head knowledge to understand that I've got to be playing into this dynamic somehow, because again, when it's an external locus of control, it's like if I fix everything outside of myself, I will be happy. But there's, you know what, that can be really, really great from a business perspective, but in
Sure.
a personal relationship, sometimes you've got to hold a mirror up and go like, sweetie, that's a little arrogant.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
We've got to kind of sit there and be like, what am I bringing to the table? And so D-Day for me was very much, okay, let me work on my lane. Let me work on my lane because I know I'm aware of a few pieces of the puzzle now. I'm aware that 95% of our behaviors and our relationships and our connections, our communication is controlled by the unconscious mind. I just don't know what those patterns are right now. So maybe I should stop focusing on everyone and everything else and just get like familiar and kind of drop into that space and not whatever happened to me when I was 17, 10, 3, whatever it is. Just I wonder what the pattern is. Like I could write you a thesis on like my own background, but I was tired of that. I needed pattern recognition and to break out of that. I knew that 93% of our communication has nothing to do with our words. So that means that my body was probably screaming something that was completely opposite of my intention, because our tone of voice, our body language, the little nuances in the things that we do and say, they speak far more powerfully than, yes, I'm listening, sweetie, as opposed to, yeah, I'm listening, sweetie. Like, we've got to kind of pull ourselves back every once in a while and be like, I wonder
Oh,
what's happening with the relationship in here and how that's coming out, because I don't have a mirror right now and I just want to figure that out. So I went and started upskilling with, because this is just, again, so many of my clients relate to this. It was all well and good to learn about it, but I wanted to get my certifications. I wanted to dive deep. And that was when I started on my journey about understanding unconscious mind patterns, human behavior analysis, somatics, and when the fact that if we can downregulate, if we can get out of that survival system state, if we can switch off those sneaky messages that keep telling us 24/7, if I'm not on alert, if I don't have, my finger on the pulse of absolutely every, um, every problem everywhere, then everything will fall apart. Then I'm going to lose the things that are most important to me. I am focusing on the minor and losing the major. So, let me get myself in order and then just see what happens and kind of surrender a little bit, pull my autonomy back, get back into that, um, self mastery place of, do you know what? All of this evidence and all of this data supports that if I get myself good, things are going to get simpler. And it's not, dancing around talking about, every problem that's ever happened. You can really argue for years about which way to stack a dishwasher. You can.
sure.
It's
Sure.
like, I've done that. It doesn't work. It's much more about what am I looking to achieve by having this conversation. And can I be vulnerable enough to allow that to happen? Because I tell you right now, there's nothing, and what can happen when we're in this state of hypervigilance. I know that for myself now, looking back, I was looking to gain perfection in communication to the point where, if I could just preempt any fight before it happened, if I could just create a rule or, say the right thing or do the right thing before it even happened, then life would be easy. And what I came to realize is that trying to be in a relationship with a perfect person is the loneliest place to be,
Mm,
right? We don't
wise words.
we
Wise words.
we don't want to be in a relationship with a perfect person,
Yeah.
because I'm not perfect. And, that's not something that anyone can live up to. Can I be in a relationship with a vulnerable person? Can I be in a relationship with a tender person? Can I be in a relationship with someone who's deeply grounded in their values? Can I be in a relationship with someone who's dynamic and playful and curious? Like, yeah, that's what I want. And then there was this moment of accountability. How much of that am I bringing to the table?
Mm. I'm going to let that just sit with the listeners for a second because I'm sitting with it. Can I be this? Can I be with this? Can I like this, but how much am I bringing of that to the relationship?
Yeah.
That's a question to sit with when you're struggling in your relationship. Like, how much are you bringing forward versus expecting of them? Yeah.
Yeah.
From the neuroscience, you've done such a deep study on this. From the neuroscience perspective, what is triggering us? Like, why do we fight over the dishwash? How the dishwasher is stacked. What, from a neuroscience perspective, like, why does that switch flip?
So there's like what we kind of miss often, and this is some really popular terminology about the background and the unconscious mind here. So some of your listeners might be familiar with it, but for me, when I learned this, it was groundbreaking. So let me paint a picture for you with our unconscious mind. Even from when we're babies, we're looking for a sense of safety. We're looking for a sense of security, and we're looking to have an understanding of the patterns that happen so we can simplify how we respond. And what can often happen is if we're in a state of stress or if we're in a state of um, fear, and for young children, that could be anything. So no blame, no finger pointing to the generation before us. Um, However, when we understand how neural connections are formed and how triggers and how our patterns are created, we realize that we're taking in like 11 million bits of information a second. That's a lot. We filter that down to like 50. And this is, and we do that by creating a lens, and this lens is something that we create as a child. And we filter all this information. All the information that we prune is scanning for, am I in danger? Am I under threat? And we do this through things like, say, a belief. So if I believe that, maybe I'm not good enough, and this belief could happen from something as innocent as I go to grab my mum's hand in the kitchen, but she's cooking dinner, so she pulls her hand away. I am going to feel abandoned. Now, genuinely, like I always say to parents when I first talk about this, I'm like, you're not going to scar your child every time you pull your hand away, so it's
Sure,
fine.
sure.
It's just simply an adaptation, a survival adaptation for our unconscious mind. Okay, what's a threat? For a child, being disconnected emotionally is a great threat. We can't survive without adult caregivers, so we adapt. And we use fight, flight, fawn, or freeze to do that. So when your mum pulls her hand away, you're going to either fight, scream and yell. You're going to flight, you're going to run away and cry. You're going to
Yep.
fawn, you're going to try and please her so that she'll hold your hand again. Or you're going to freeze and just pretend that, it doesn't bother you and, stuff your feelings down. So generally, you'll kind of adapt a survival response. How am I going to kind of survive and create a validation response instead of a deep, authentic need being met? And that validation response can happen when I either fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And so triggers happen when it feels familiar. So even though it was just your mum pulling your hand away while she was cooking dinner, that could have begun the cascade of, okay, where else can I look for the threat that I'm going to be abandoned? And so anytime there's, say, an argument about the dishes, which is the most common one because everybody fights about the dishes sometimes. What we're seeing and hearing has nothing to do with the dishes and everything to do with, am I having my needs met? Do you see me? Do you hear me? Do you care about me? Do I even know what my feelings and needs are? And do I feel safe enough to get vulnerable with them to say to you, hey, look, I know we're talking about the dishes here, but in my body, every time we talk about dishes, I actually feel really panicky. I feel kind of scared because it's at the end of a long day, I feel really overstimulated. It's just the one thing at the end of the day that I'm looking for a signal of security on. I don't want to have this fight every time. So what I need is some support. So the need that I'm actually looking to meet here is support. It's not, are the dishes done? It's not, did you leave your clothes on the floor? It's not, did you call that person from the school? It's, you know, can I articulate? Can I be vulnerable enough? Do I even know how to get out of that hypervigilant state long enough to find that vulnerability within myself so that I can meet that? Because otherwise, what happens is when the dishes happen or when the mum pulls the hand out, we mask. We mask up, we use survival, and we try to fight, flight, form, freeze. And for a lot of people who are familiar with hypervigilance and hyper problem solving, hyper awareness, that hypervigilance is a fight response, right? Let me armor up, let me problem solve, let me fix what's on the surface, and then I don't even have to think about the feeling of fear or tenderness or vulnerability that's underneath. But the only challenge there is then we never get that met.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, and especially as men, I love your opinion on this, but men, I think, just historically, certainly me, I want to, if there's an issue, great. Here's the answer. Let me solve it. Let's go to the next thing. Like
Mhm.
I'm a problem solver. And I have a hammer for every job,
Right?
for
Exactly.
every, and versus getting beneath that and we don't need to solve this. We need to explore this and talk
Yeah,
about that. Yeah.
yeah. But for so many of us, it's not until our life starts to fall apart that we're like, "Well, maybe I don't need a hammer for this. Maybe hammer is the
Yeah.
wrong tool completely."
Yep.
And it's challenging because we don't wanna wait for our life to fall apart before we're like, "Hey, at the end of the day, when I've built my empire, what am I coming home to?"
Mm,
We wanna be able to say to ourselves, "Hey, do you know what? I'm not looking to go woo-woo. I'm not looking to, like, take my brain apart here. I'm looking for play. I'm looking for
yeah.
curiosity. I'm looking to have a new foundation that doesn't use, um, the last of my energy reserves at the end of every day just to keep this ship on track. I
Yep.
wanna be able to use a different kind of fuel, and regulation, a rested nervous system, that's where the genius ideas come from. That's
Yeah.
where knowing where you are, um, micromanaging versus, having clear awareness and a clear plan, that's where that differentiation comes from. Because you're not operating from, "Okay, if I just keep moving, if I just keep doing, if I just keep problem solving, then I can avoid, the vulnerability of, oh, I wonder what's actually happening underneath here." Because a lot of the time for so many of us, it's like, "Oh gosh, I don't wanna sit with that discomfort. I don't wanna sit with
Yeah.
that," you know, and what I say to that is, yes, if you look at a lot of traditional if anyone's ever been to traditional therapy or been through stuff in the past, that's what we think.
Mhm.
You're gonna have to go through the muck. You're really just gonna have
Yep.
to sit in misery for years before you really get anywhere. And and my experience is actually, how about, yes, it's all of that information is useful. If you've lived it, that's useful. However, pattern recognition, working with the body, somatics, regulating your nervous system, a simple skill set, and, finding a place where it can be safe to get vulnerable. Like, it's not, you don't have to choose between the fear and the chaos of, "Oh gosh, do I have to trudge through decades of muck to kind of even get through my feelings?" Versus, "You know what? How about I start simplifying what I really feel and what I need, and understand that when I have mastery over the nervous system, the way that my body was built biologically in the first place, maybe I can apply my problem-solving skill set to actually get my needs met." Like, that's cool.
I'll share because just to rewind a bit, you said, yeah, if you build your empire, but then there's nothing to come home to. Now, this is back in 2012 or something, 12, 14 years ago, 13 years ago, whatever. I, I've been divorced. I'm remarried now, but when I was single after being divorced, and I had two kids, and I was married for 19 years, still really close to my ex-wife, and we have a great co-parenting relationship, even now that the kids are grown. But I got promoted. I was working for a company at the time. I wasn't working for myself, but I was working for a company, and we merged two companies, and I was promoted to become the president of the business, and really exciting, and really a successful moment. And I remember driving home, Walking into the house, it's dead silent because the kids were with my ex-wife for that evening. And I sat down on the couch and I stared at the TV that was not turned on. And I just realized, yeah, there's more to this. Like, by all means, I had a really successful day. And this is one of the saddest evenings of my life because I have no one to share it with, and it just, when you said that about building an empire, but what are you coming home to? I think too often entrepreneurs, very driven people, lose sight that you do that so that you can then maximize what you come home to and the opportunities and the options that you can provide if you're more successful for the people that you love. But when you come home to nothing, it's sobering. It's
It is.
really, really sobering.
Yeah. And there's this unique challenge as well that some people in successful businesses and, okay relationships and, they've ticked the boxes and then they come home and even when things are going well, there's this gnawing feeling of like, what am I missing? And something that I come back to again and again, there's two things that I come back to again and again and again. For anyone who's like, okay, I feel like I've lost my compass. What am I even fighting for? And I even have people, just out of defense and fear, sit there and be like, do you know what? I stuffed this. I'm just gonna go like take my take my jet or whatever it is, and I'm gonna go sail off into the sunset and stuff relationships, stuff all this. It's all too hard. And something, for me personally, there are a couple of things that really have that act as my compass and my guide. And anyone who's a parent will always say parents first. For me as well, my faith is such a huge thing. My sense of purpose. Those are really traditional things. The work that I do, because I've lived it, I know the groundbreaking effect that it had on my mental well-being, my life, my business, my just that ability to light up every day and go like this is what I'm alive for. In saying that, there are the two things that everyone, no matter what your sense of faith is, no matter whether you're a parent or you're that's not been your path, um, no matter what whether you're just working on building an empire or working for your dream and your passions, the two things that always inform where I want to be by the end of my life are, one, the five wishes of the dying. Um, that's such a powerful lesson in what we want at the end of our lives. The five greatest regrets of the dying. One of them being, I wish I hadn't thought so much about what everyone else thought of me. I wish I'd done that thing. I wish I'd followed that dream because nobody cared. It didn't matter if I ended up with egg on my face. So those five
Yeah.
regrets of the dying, they're beautiful things. But the second is also one of the longest studies ever done by Harvard on health and happiness. Um, they expected a really strong correlation between where you lived and maybe your sense of wealth and, you know, all of these things. They took into account people no matter where they lived, what country, what demographic, how much money they had. They took everything into account and they realized that without fail, the greatest indicator that showed whether you were going to have a long, fulfilling, healthy, and happy life had one common denominator, and that was and the strength and depth of our connections and our relationships around us.
Mm.
That was
Yeah.
so moving to me because we can so easily think, if I just have that thing, if I just do that thing, if I just, go, 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 then I'll be happy. But do you know what? There's always another milestone.
Yeah. Always.
Mhm.
Always. So then let me ask you, if I can, what are the most common blocks then people are experiencing when they come to you, specifically like your experience when they come to you? Because I don't know about in Australia, but in the States, over 50% of marriages, not relationships, marriages, even marriages with children, end in divorce. And so, what is the most common block? And then I guess a question that I don't know if anybody's qualified to answer, but I would love your opinion, your thoughts. Will this ever change?
My dream is that it could become much more it can be a much more simple answer to the question, because the greatest fear for everyone who has ever come through Rise really isn't necessarily, will I get divorced or not? It's, will I end up in this situation again? And
Mm,
how will I know whether it's a me problem or a them problem? You know, how will I know whether this was the right decision? So that fear of making the wrong decision is the most crippling issue that they're facing at that point in time. Um,
yeah.
and their fears are completely founded. It's half of American marriages. It's 60 to 70% of second marriages in America as well.
Jeez.
So the last thing that we want is to become a statistic, just to leave one marriage and then have a higher chance of it not working out the second time around. That's that's what we all want to avoid. And we can do that by bringing back our own mastery and taking the masks off of our own patterns and behaviors, and just stepping back into, hey, what is going on? How do I step out of that pattern of mystery, confusion, loss, that crippling fear of failure around, what if I'm making the wrong decision? Well, how about we change that completely? We take that off the table. You can't make a wrong decision. Let's start there. But what you can do instead is start to get curious about what's going on here. Take the pressure off. Oh my gosh, am I going to get divorced tomorrow? Do I have to do it tomorrow? Do I have to stay? Am I going to be locked in forever? Like, let the future be. Just start focusing on, okay, what's happening in my nervous system? Am I reacting
Mm.
or am I responding? And do I have somewhere to go to get those answers? And most importantly, can I get support with that? For me, that was really, really important. No matter whether it was a community group, people who shared the same values as me. So many men, the only place that they've got support is to go play golf and complain about their wives, which really doesn't help. And for so many women, it's the same, going out with their girlfriends, bitching about their husbands,
Yeah.
having a few cocktails, going back home, and then doing it again. Like, I want to, like, us to all kind of step into that place of like, hey, am I putting myself in the right space, in the safe spaces with people who are really sharing my values? Do I know what my values are? And do I know how to find out? You know, that's when we start grounding into, oh, okay, how can I simplify? Because it's the overwhelm of the future and the overwhelm of the fear of failure that's so crippling in that moment of transition of, I'm not happy.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by ThriveMore Autopilot. The latest data shows a large amount of small to mid-sized business owners are living paycheck to paycheck, and that is not why you started a business in the first place. We all start businesses to create the freedom in our lives that we want and to give us options. But to do that, you need more leads, and you need to turn those prospects into long-term paying customers. Well, the solution is ThriveMore Autopilot. ThriveMore Autopilot is the turnkey solution to take the stress and the hard work out of new customer acquisition, which is the lifeblood of any small business. ThriveMore Autopilot works on your behalf to generate a waterfall of new leads through various channels, to nurture those leads with proprietary AI solutions that mimic human interaction, to sell memberships and help you increase your monthly recurring revenue. And they even provide you coaching and your team coaching on the most effective sales techniques and give you a community of other like-minded business owners. ThriveMore Autopilot is how you scale your business without stress and the relentless phone calls and texts and reach outs to the prospects to get them to show up for that first appointment or to show up to that call. So learn how ThriveMore Autopilot can help you win big by going to thrivemore.ai. That's thrivemore.ai. ThriveMore Autopilot, the strategic partner for small to mid-sized business owners to help you scale and live the life of your dreams. I always ask all my guests the same last 2 or 3 questions, and these two, I'm looking forward to this because of what you do and how many people you've helped and worked with. If we fast forward to the end of your life, you're a younger person, but we fast forward to the end of your life and you've lived this long, rich, beautiful life and helped a lot of people and helped a lot of relationships. But we're at your funeral and there's a loved one who's reading your eulogy, but they're only allowed to use 3 words to describe you. It doesn't have to make a cute phrase or anything, but just 3 descriptors, 3 words, 3 values, whatever it may be. As you're living your life today, knowing that that day will eventually come, what 3 words do you hope that loved one says about you at that service?
I hope they'll be kind, brave, and loving.
Mm,
I really do. And I say that as someone who never used to see myself as a particularly, I used to see it as more of a badge of honor. Like, I'm someone who's tough, I'm someone who can get stuff done. And something that I speak about often is that we can so easily fall into the trap of thinking that our patterns are identity, and they're not. You know, my 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 patterns, my identity, is who I choose to be. They're my values that I live by every day, and I don't think I'm gonna get it right. I think I have many more mistakes ahead of me. But gosh, I wanna be someone who's kind. I wanna be someone who's brave. I really do, and I think, I that's something I really try to hold myself to. Whenever I'm in an uncomfortable situation, I try to ask myself, not how do I avoid the discomfort, but how can I choose the discomfort that's gonna take me somewhere, and there's something that's gonna be that I can be proud of at the end of that. Um, and and that I really hope and pray that that can be something that, you know, by the time I've taken my last day here on earth, that I can I can be at peace and ease that I gave everything to hopefully being those 3 things. Um, and if if anyone was able to stand up at the end of my life and be able to say that I was any of those things at all, I'll feel very blessed. But those are definitely three things that I really hope. And I think that that's such a lovely exercise to do. So thank you.
I was asked that, well, you're certainly welcome. I was asked that before I started at, like, a 12-month, leadership program, and I think it was just a quick question for them in the intake process, but we hung up the phone, I sat back and I thought, okay, if those 3 words are really important to me, then every decision I make in my life needs to be supporting one of those 3 things.
Mm,
Like, if I'm making decisions that don't align with those 3 things, I need to rethink those decisions. It was a lightning bolt moment for me.
mm.
So much so that I've asked 120 guests on this show that same question, because it's just it boils your mission and your life's purpose down really quickly, really simply, and then the second to last question is, this one's just a little bit more fun, but it also, again, because of what you do and how you help people, and that you help people repair and grow in their relationships. If I were to give you a magic wand and you could wave that magic wand, Lauren, you could just wave it tonight and make one change to the way the world is, the way people are, the way the world operates, just whatever that may be, but one material change to the world, so that when we go to bed tonight and we wake up in the morning, the world operates a little differently according to you. And how would it operate differently according to you?
I love this so much. And you know what? I want to find the perfect word, but I'm going to paint the picture instead. I think
Sure.
that if I could wave a magic wand and everyone could wake up a little bit differently, or the world could be a little bit different tomorrow, gosh, I would just allow us all to, and I want to say this in a way that's so joyful. I want, I would love it if we could all just have a tiny bit more compassion for the things we don't understand,
Hmm.
because enmeshment is I can't be happy unless you're happy, but it's also if you're unhappy, I'm unhappy. And that means something bad about me. And that translates to politics. That translates to
Yeah.
relationships. That translates to parenting. If you're not with me, you're against me. And just that touch of extra space that comes with, like, regulation, that comes with empowerment, that comes with not being at the mercy of our patterns, means we've got that tiny bit of room for curiosity. I wonder if I can learn something. I wonder if
Yeah.
there's a motivation here that, I might not even agree with, but now I've got grace and understanding, and maybe we can have like a teamwork conversation here that isn't about compromise. It's about understanding. It's about creating something that was better than what was there before. And if we can bring that into our homes, if we can bring that to our businesses, that translates on a big scale. And it all starts at home. It all starts on a micro level, with just having enough joy and vulnerability to say, I don't know everything. I really
Yeah.
don't. I don't even know everything about this conversation walking into it. I think this is about the dishes, but what if for the other person, it's actually about something much deeper? And if I create just enough curiosity, do you know what? This conversation can be something that I was dreading to, hey, wow, I've learned so much. This is so much richer. There is so much joy and connection and compassion and growth here. Like, I wonder where we can go from here.
Beautiful answer. Beautiful. Most important question, because there are some listeners that are listening and may not be in what they feel is an ideal relationship, or know they need to work on themselves first and want to make their relationship work. Or if they're not in a relationship, make sure they find the next relationship they're in, they find themselves in the right relationship for them. How do people connect with you, follow you, work with you? If you could share that, and we'll put it all in the show notes, of course, too.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love for you to come and hang out with me. I try and share as much as I can. I hang out most of the time on Instagram at the.connection.catalyst. I try and share as much of my own journey as I can, in my podcast, the Connection Podcast, and, have all sorts of free trainings available so that you can, dip a toe in and start to explore uncovering your own patterns, getting back in your own body, and finding that play, finding that clarity and ease again, because it's there when we find it with ourselves.
Wonderful, wonderful. We'll put that in the show notes so that the listeners can just click on that and go right to your social media and find your podcast and everything else. I just want to say thank you. This has been really good. I think this is a really important episode, because we talk so much about business on this show, and physical health and building wealth. But like you said, and what I shared is, for what? For what, unless you can come home to a place that you love, and with people that you cherish.
Mm.
And I think that at the end of the day is what matters most, without a doubt, full stop. So thank you for sharing today, and thank you for coming on the ThriveMore podcast.
Thank you so much, Roger. It's been such a joy.
Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.